Welcome to PD Connect, connecting the Parkinson's community with resources, information, and each other.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of PD Connect. We're joined today by a special guest, Cynthia Badrack, who's going to talk to us about an exercise program for the Parkinson's community that's sweeping the nation. Welcome to the show, Cynthia.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's good to have you on the show.
I'm excited about getting to talk to you guys today.
Absolutely. Cynthia, could you start us off by sharing your connection with the Parkinson's community?
Yes. My father's brother, my uncle, had Parkinson's, and we watched him go through the progressions of the disease. And when he passed away 15 years ago, people with Parkinson's were still told to go home and do nothing. So I had a personal connection and a loss that I guess just stayed with me for many years until I discovered Rocksteady Boxing. And then I understood why I had to have that experience.
Well, and you're here today to talk to us and to share with our listeners the Rocksteady Boxing program. And I think it'd be great if you could start off by talking a little bit about the program in general, and then we can go more into what motivated you to become a part of the program, what led you to feel like this was a great program, which it is for the Parkinson's community. But first off, let's start with share a little bit about an overview of the program itself.
Okay, well, Rocksteady Boxing was created in 2006. Scott Newman from Indiana was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease and started doing some boxing training and vigorous exercise, and noticed after several months that his tremor had stopped or diminished. He held up his hand one day and said, "Look, I'm Rocksteady." And this was before there had been too many scientific studies done about the effects of exercise on people who have Parkinson's disease. And he worked together with a professional boxer by the name of Christiane Fulmar, and they created the boxing program that exists today as Rocksteady Boxing, and they are based in Indianapolis, Indiana.
That backstory is really interesting because I never knew how the term or how the name Rocksteady came about.
Yeah, isn't that great?
Yeah, the name makes perfect sense now. Why is it that boxing in particular seems to be beneficial to people living with Parkinson's disease?
A couple of reasons. First of all, when you're boxing, you're using gross motor skills, all of your larger muscles, which typically are easier for people with Parkinson's to control. Secondly, it causes your heart rate to accelerate, and that forced intensive exercise is exactly what people with Parkinson's need to just keep the disease from advancing. It's actually the only thing that will keep the disease from progressing more rapidly. And thirdly, it works on so many different things: hand-to-eye coordination, their flexibility, their agility. When you couple all of the training benefits of boxing with putting people in a room who have similar circumstances and experiences, it becomes a social event for them. It becomes kind of a safe place for them. At Rocksteady Boxing of Central Florida, we focus on helping to improve their quality of life or maintain it. And so we focus on the boxing as well as how to improve our day-to-day activities through those exercises, those skills.
And just talking about the boxing piece of it first, my co-host here has some experience with boxing that she can share and actually has been boxing. Tonya, you've been boxing for how long now?
It's interesting because I started boxing because my mother-in-law called me and said, turn on the news. It was a Sunday morning news program. Mm-hmm. And the host, her husband has Parkinson's, and he had been training at a Rocksteady gym in Brooklyn.
Right.
And so Chad and I watched the segment, and Chad goes, guess what we're doing? We're going boxing. Because he already worked with the trainer and did boxing. Mm-hmm. So he called up his trainer and said, I'm going to bring Tonya with me. And that was probably back in 2000 and
it's been a couple years.
5 years ago.
Oh, is that many? Okay. Well,
right. So you can see the benefits that you get from just that vigorous training yourself.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Well, and I remember the story a little differently because I think what happened is I actually went to a training session, talked to the trainer while I was there after she and I talked about it, came home and said, how do you feel about actually going and, to a boxing training session or trying it out? I said, you already know John, and I talked to him and made sure he was comfortable working with you. And at the time there wasn't, I don't think, a Rocksteady program in the area. So it was several years ago.
Right.
And Tonya's response was, well, I'll give it a try. I said, great. You've got a lesson scheduled tomorrow.
I love that.
And so I think that's how I seem to recall it happened. But
yeah, you're probably right.
And it's worked out really well for Tonya. I think she's experienced a lot of benefits from boxing. She's continued to work with John because he's someone that we know. And he works one-on-one with her, and he's really been able to adapt well to what she can do and how she can improve. And he's actually worked with one or two other people with Parkinson's as well over time. But you bring up a great point about the things that are offered by the Rocksteady Boxing program that go beyond just a boxing training session or just, mitt work and bag work and just intensive exercise. Can you talk a little bit more about the focus of the program on things beyond just boxing?
Sure. I kind of divide our class into sections. So the first section is always a little bit of a get to know you, warm up your body. And it offers the boxers a chance to get to know new people who come in because we have people coming in and out all the time. But it also works on voice activation. So that's a huge part of our program, voice activation, keeping those muscles in their throat strong because it does affect the Parkinson's disease affects their ability to swallow. So the stronger you keep those vocal muscles, the better off you are down the road with the swallowing aspect of it. And then we do some warm-up drills. We focus on a lot of what we typically see in people with Parkinson's, where they have a shuffled gait or an uneven gait, so walking. So we take the time to work on walking heel-toe, and I try to explain to them why walking heel-toe is important and how their posture and their alignment affects their Parkinson's and their balance. For example, I was telling them the other day that the weight of their head falling forward puts pressure on the top of their spinal cord, and there are some people that believe just that postural difference alone is changing the blood flow to their brain, and they liken it to your elbow falling asleep, your arm falling asleep if you've put pressure on a certain part of your body. And so there's a theory that those brain cells aren't actually dying. They're just not getting enough blood circulation. We talk about things like that. I let them know how their balance is affected by one arm perhaps not swinging as much as the other. We talk about falling, not if we fall, but when we fall and how we fall, and the fact that their ability to be able to walk heel-toe and use the sections of their feet affects whether they may or may not fall, because most of the time when somebody trips, they fall because they don't have the ability to flex their foot or pull their toes back and catch themselves on their whole foot. So simple things like walking. We focus on getting in and out of the car, buttoning our shirts, zipping things. I have exercises that work their hands. I bring them tools and show them things to do. Today, for example, we were standing up and I had them lift one leg and move it and then turn their body. And I said, can anybody tell me when you would use this kind of motion? And somebody said, getting out of the car. So we try to find things that are difficult for them and make them a little easier. A lot of my boxers are older, so they're perhaps not doing certain activities anymore. They might not be used to walking backwards or sideways. So we're reminding them how to do those things. We're reminding them how to use their limbs in their fuller range of motion. For example, jump roping. When I give them a jump rope, I don't expect a 77-year-old man to be able to jump, but I want him to start to learn to use his wrists and his shoulders and find that range of motion. And then we do pattern and progress them into learning how to shift their weight and step over items as well as jump over them. So we kind of try to incorporate a little bit of everything. I give them dance sometimes, that I come from a dance background. I have a blue belt in Muay Thai kickboxing, so I tell them sometimes that I'm going to turn them into self-defense warriors. Make a joke as they practice kneeing each other in a pad. So
right.
We try to make it fun and kind of informative all at the same time. A lot of them have spouses that stay or help them. And I think it's important for them to understand that I'm not just arbitrarily trying to annoy them by having them repeatedly stand on one foot and bend over to pick up an imaginary napkin, that there's a purpose for it. So we just try to focus on lots of different aspects of their life while we're really increasing their range of motion, their flexibility, their stability, all of that.
How long? That's a lot of tasks going on there. How long is every class?
An hour and a half.
Oh, wow. That's great.
And I keep them boxing for at least 30 minutes. And I tell them all the time they need to have 2.5 hours of vigorous exercise every week. So as important as their medicine is, exercise is as important. So if I can give them at least a half an hour of that, or even 45 minutes each day, then they know they've got that much credit, so to speak, in their exercise bank. And what they do on their own time is helpful as well. So yeah, we do cram a lot in, and I have them multitask. So today they were all having to multiply and count or sing while they were doing something with their hands, like threading washers in a bolt or jumping rope. So
I would have failed that activity.
Well, and I love the creativity in the way that you approach the different, focusing on different motor skills, and also it sounds like mixing in a mental aspect to it. Yeah. Boxing in and of itself, and I've boxed off and on for years, I tell people all the time, is a fantastic sport. It's a fantastic exercise activity. And when you say 30 minutes of boxing, 30 minutes of boxing is an intense 30 minutes of exercise. I mean, but there's so many. I was thinking about this as you were talking about the program and the different things you do. Boxing lends itself so wonderfully to creating exercise programs for the Parkinson's community, because you can tailor it to different ages. You can tailor it to different abilities. You don't have to have, a base level of understanding of the sport to be able to engage in it in a fun and active way. I mean, literally, there have been times that Tonya and I and my son have all gone to a boxing training session together with John that she trains with. And our son is 11 now, but he was younger at the time. I mean, the first time I think he put on a pair of gloves, he was probably 6, maybe 5. And it really is an extraordinary exercise and a great sport. And when I first heard about the concept of the Rocksteady Boxing program, I thought, this is fantastic, because I know how much people can benefit from that form of exercise.
Yeah, it really does tax them. And, I remind them all the time that I'm just there as a guide and a coach. Just because I'm giving you 30 seconds to practice your jab doesn't mean you have to go full out for those 30 seconds. And sometimes I'll change their tempo and I'll say, just throw that punch in slow motion. Okay, now speed up. Now act like you're really mad and you're hitting something, because it does take a lot out of them. And then I'll ask them, are you feeling tired? And they'll say yes. And I'll say, good. Okay, I'm not going to let you rest yet, but
I think the other piece of it too, beyond just the physical aspect and the intense exercise that we know is good, and the studies have shown is good for people living with Parkinson's. It's beyond good. It's critical. But the other piece of it is there's something therapeutic about it. I mean, I think Tonya can share that too. There's something therapeutic about just going in and, I'll use the term wailing on a heavy bag or hitting a set of mitts. And I used to joke, it's, hitting a heavy bag for 30 minutes is cheaper than a therapist.
Absolutely.
but it's the other thing, in addition to sort of being therapeutic and releasing, I think, some of that frustration or tension, or at times maybe even anger, is also, it can be very empowering. And I've seen that with Tonya. Tonya, you want to talk about that?
Sure. I noticed the first time I went, at first I was intimidated by, the punches that he was asking me to throw. And I was getting frustrated because literally I went to lift my arm and to throw a punch, and I had a tremor the whole time. It was shaking, and I was so weak I couldn't even make contact. And I was frustrated at first, but then once I actually made contact, it felt great. And I looked at Chad when we were done. I said, when can we come back? Yeah. Because I loved it. It is very therapeutic. but I've noticed a big difference in my ability. And when I had to take some time off from boxing this past year, and I just started back a couple weeks ago, and I can tell a big difference in my cognitive function.
Right.
And and I was doing other exercises, but there's a component to the boxing that I can't really pinpoint, but it just makes me feel better.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do try to explain to the participants in class that all of this physical exercise is actually making their brain stronger, and it's making certain parts of their brain stronger, and it's teaching their brain how to relearn activities that might be difficult. So the first time we do a combination or something that's new to them, it's challenging. But if we stop and we clear our head for a minute and come back to it, the second and third time, they've taught themselves something. And that's very empowering for people who think that they are declining, to be able to see that they can learn, and they can learn it quickly. Within 30 seconds, they're able to learn something. And the other thing that they don't see that I do is that no matter how much or little their disease has progressed over the years, they still can increase their flexibility, their range of motion. Boxers, people who have had severe muscle rigidity, when you touch their arm, it's stiff, now have a suppleness to that muscle. I tell them all the time, motion is lotion. And
I love it.
I want them to move those limbs. So it is empowering. And we talk a lot about the fact that our opponent is Parkinson's. In the cheer that we did today, we speak about that. But at the end of our class, we always do a cheer. And the cheer we did today was float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. I may have Parkinson's, but Parkinson's doesn't have me.
Oh, that's great.
And I try to remind them of that every day and compliment them on just getting themselves there, making themselves come and try something that's hard and new and maybe a little annoying and exhausting at times. But I think across the board, they feel better when they leave because they know how much they've accomplished.
Having the courage to even go to the class, because I think a lot of people might be intimidated when they hear about boxing, when they have Parkinson's. But because this program is specifically for people with Parkinson's, I think it's fabulous, and I would encourage everyone to try it.
Absolutely. And I was going to say, and Tonya, on the same wavelength here, that's one of the great things about the Rocksteady program is that it takes something that might otherwise be intimidating, right? I mean, if you're a person living with Parkinson's and you want to go boxing, it can be very intimidating to enter a gym that's a martial arts gym or a boxing gym, particularly if you know that you're dealing with, limitations. And you've taken that out of the equation. And for Tonya's first experience with boxing, where I've always admired the courage she showed to show up and do that, because the gym she went to here in Orlando, it's a fighter's gym. I mean, there's a cage in the gym. They literally train. One of the owners is a UFC fighter or a former UFC fighter. They train fighters who fight in tournaments similar to UFC. I mean, and she walked into this place and did a training session. And I thought at the time, that's an intimidating environment. And she had the courage to do it. And I love the fact that your program takes that piece out of it. Here you are around other people who are dealing with similar challenges, and you can come experience the benefits of this extraordinary type of exercise, but under a program that offers so much more than just boxing.
Yeah, and they really are remarkable. They become, cheerleaders for each other when they can see that one is having a difficult time. If somebody stumbles, sometimes I don't make them. I give them the choice of going onto the floor on their hands and knees, or sitting, or experiencing what it's like to be on your hands and knees and roll over. And they reach down and they help each other and pick them up. And again, just remarkable, courageous, tenacious. They are inspiring. The people that I have met through this program are what inspires me each day to return and try to find some new, exciting, and fun challenge for them,
I was going to say, I love the Parkinson's community. I think you probably know, or I probably told you, that I had lived in denial for many years until I had deep brain stimulation, because I thought I was only one. And, why is this happening to me? I was having a pity party for a long time.
Yeah.
Years. But now that I'm part of this community and I've connected with people all around the country, it's just so empowering in and of itself to know other people and to be able to share your stories and, relate. Oh, I'm not having a good day today. Oh, I'm having a good PD day.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is an important thing to remind ourselves and each other of, is that each time they come in, all you can do is your best for that day.
Exactly.
Every day is a little different. One of my boxers the other day said, my balance isn't so good today. And I said, well, I understand that. He said, but how could you understand? You have good balance. You don't have Parkinson's. I said, well, you didn't know this about me, but I was a dancer professionally. And trust me, there were some days where I had really good balance and some days that I didn't. So it's all relative. We all have experienced having good days and bad days, having weak days and strong days. No, I can't see it from your point of view, but I at least understand. And all I ask of you is to be safe. If you've come in the room, you're there to participate. And so let us support each other and don't be so judgmental, so self-judging.
Yeah, we're our own worst critics.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and we've hit on it now, but one of the other great benefits of
no pun intended.
Oh, right. No pun intended. I didn't even realize I did that. One of the other benefits of the program is that you've got this support group that isn't a support group, right? I mean, Tonya's talked about, and other people have shared with us we're going to use that word again, the intimidation factor associated with trying to go to a support group or reasons that people don't like to do that sometimes, or they're reluctant to start down the road of attending a support group meeting. And here you've got that element, but in a very different environment and with a great activity mixed in and everything else. But at the same time, you're getting the benefits of being around other people who have Parkinson's. You're getting the benefit of connecting. We use this term all the time with other members of the Parkinson's community, which we think is absolutely critical, hence the name of our podcast, PD Connect. So I just think there's so many different things that are wonderful about this program. And, when we started this interview, you talked about your personal connection to Parkinson's and sort of the motivation to get involved in the Rocksteady program once you became aware of it. And you hit on this a little bit. There it is again. But what have you experienced in terms of benefits to you having a connection to this community through the Rocksteady program, through being an instructor in the program?
Right. That's a really interesting question, because I came to the program already having experience as a boxer and having experience as a teacher. And I was going to use my experience as a Pilates instructor and try to share with them how to learn to move. Coming from more of a dance and movement background. And what I've learned is that all of that is nothing without the human connection. And I've really learned to communicate and understand the Parkinson's community and what it must feel like to be in their head when they're trying to get through just what seems to us a normal activity. One of the boxers was saying today, I just feel tired all the time. And I said, yeah, but do you understand that you are having to work twice as hard every day just to stand up, just to get in and out of the car, just to write something down? So I think it's given me a different level of understanding. I don't want to say compassion, because then it would sound like I wasn't compassionate before, but a different level of empathy.
Yeah, that's the word I was going to say. I understand exactly what you mean. I mean, as a person, as the spouse of somebody living with Parkinson's, there's been a number of different times over the years. I mean, Tonya and I are 10 plus years into this journey where something that I experienced or witnessed gave me a different level of empathy, not only for her challenges, but the challenges of others who are living with this insidious disease.
Right.
And that's a great perspective that you shared. One of the other thing it hits on with your background and everything is not just anybody can become hang out a sign that says Rocksteady Boxing. There's a program that you have to go through to become an instructor. Can you share a little bit about, you don't have to go into the details about it, but just kind of what some of the requirements are, or what kind of program you had to go to, so that our listeners will understand there really is an effort being made by Rocksteady to properly train people to offer the physical and mental benefits of this program.
It's an interesting program. They don't require you to have any skill or any education when you go. And at first I thought, I don't understand how this is going to work. There were people whose spouses had Parkinson's, so they were at training with me. And there were people who already were boxers. But what they do is they get this group of instructors together, and the first thing they do in your 3-day weekend is they teach you about Parkinson's. So they help you understand how Parkinson's works, what it does to your brain and your body, and how to combat those issues, whether it's the bradykinesia, the gait, the freezing, the cognitive issues, muscle rigidity, tremor, all of that stuff that you might not have known from your previous life is addressed first. And then they take you into the room and they let you experience a boxing class. And I can't even explain to you what it's like to walk into this enormous gym filled with dozens of people who are seemingly doing things that I, an able-bodied person younger than many of them, could not possibly have done. I was blown away. So they show you the class first, and then they teach you how to help each of the boxers and what might be the best thing to do if they freeze, or how you can communicate this to them if you're trying to get them to move a certain way. And there is no education about how to box or how to teach. They just give you the structure. They say it's a great idea if you come in and you do some kind of an introduction. And it's a great idea if you do some kind of a warm-up, and then you're going to box, and here are a lot of drills you can do. And then once you've gone through the training, it's your choice as to whether you want to become an affiliate or not. And if you want to become affiliate, you pick a name. I picked Rocksteady Boxing of Central Florida. And then once you pick that name and you become an affiliate, you become part of their group. So that no matter where you are in the world, not even just the United States, in the world, if you type in rocksteadyboxing.org, it pulls up a website, and then by typing in your zip code, you can find the closest boxing facility to you.
And they're all over the place now.
They're everywhere. They're all over. And I know some people think that, if there are too many in one community, everybody's going to be competing with each other. But how can you think about competition when we're talking about fighting Parkinson's? I mean, we work out of a community center. I take everything in and I haul everything out. For that hour and a half we're there, that is our boxing gym. And the only thing that I think that we are fighting is Parkinson's.
That's what I was going to say. We have the same opponent.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So they are trying to make the program more accessible for people who can't travel. I believe they're working on, or may already have, an online program. But they do require you to have a really fundamental understanding of Parkinson's and dealing with people from Parkinson's and the liability that goes with that, and all of the things that are going to come with having people in your classes that could fall and injure themselves. I had 2 boxers fall in one day last week. One of them fell just coming in the door, so it wasn't anything that we had done. And another backed into something, and we all saw him going kind of slow motion, and he caught himself. And, you can't ignore that when it happens in front of 20 people.
Right.
I say, okay, everybody, take a minute. They see me go over to the person on the floor. We talk about how they feel. We make sure they sit up, that they haven't hit anything really hard, their head, etc. In this instance, he literally sat down. And, it's kind of what it looked like. He ended up sitting down. And then we talked about how are we going to get up off the floor, and why do we want to take our time getting up off the floor? First of all, he's a little freaked out that he just fell.
Right.
Embarrassed that he just fell in front of all of you. So now what are we going to do with that? We're going to make sure that he's not hurt, that he doesn't feel he impacted anything too severely, and we're going to get him up safely. And then we're all going to keep our eye on him, and I have chairs around the room, and we have all the first aid stuff you could ever need. But, when those things happen spontaneously, you have to make it part of a larger discussion. And that's what we try to do, to just alleviate someone's embarrassment or someone's awkward moment. And those are things that maybe they can't teach you. But I do want to tell you one other thing that I learned when I was in Indianapolis. I was watching this young man with his father. He was his corner man, and he was leading them through. And the father kept freezing. And he couldn't move his feet. He just couldn't. And you know what I'm talking about. And the son kept going over to him and going, Dad, come on, you can do it. You just put your foot, you just move. And no matter what he said, of course, it was just more frustrating for the gentleman who had Parkinson's. Sure. And so I walked over and I looked at this gentleman and I said, could you step over my foot? And I put my foot in front of him. And he walked right over my foot. And the son looked at me with tears in his eyes like, how did you make that happen? And then I watched him throughout the rest of the class when his father would freeze. He'd put his foot in front of him and his dad would step over it. And I thought, that's what this is about. It's not just about helping the boxers feel better, helping the people with Parkinson's feel better. It's about the quality of life for their whole family. It's about teaching all of us how to help people with Parkinson's cope, how to function, how to be there for that person that you see in the grocery store that's stuck and doesn't know what to do. If we can all learn how to better care for people who are in our inner circle, I think that gets passed on, so to speak.
Absolutely. And it's so interesting that the program focuses primarily on, and I think it's fantastic that the program focuses primarily on understanding Parkinson's disease and the symptoms and what people are going through and how to connect with them and how to work with them. I mean, the boxing piece, I could teach somebody how to give a 30-minute boxing class I could teach a person of average intelligence how to do that in probably an hour or less. Sure. That part's not complicated, right? That's the part of the beauty of boxing. It's not a complicated exercise. You can do it if you do it from an absolute beginner level with terrible form all the way up through, a pro level. You can get an intense exercise, the benefit of intense exercise from it without having great form. So the piece that really matters in the training that is offered by Rocksteady that you just described is understanding how to work with the Parkinson's community and understanding how to get the maximum benefit from this exercise program. I just think that's great. And I will tell you, nobody had ever walked me through what was involved in the training. So I really appreciate you sharing that. I tell you what you really made me want to do. I want to go up to this. I think Tonya and I would have a blast if we went up to Indianapolis and jumped into one of those classes where they were doing the training.
They take tissue.
I'm sure.
Tearjerker.
My eyes were welling up with tears when you were telling the story.
Of the man and his son. Yeah.
It's just a palpable feeling, when you're in a room like that. And there are moments like that just in our boxing classes when they cheer each other on or they do something silly or, those little moments that inspire you and inspire them. Well, that's what it's about,
Well, hopefully we've inspired our listeners who haven't tried a Rocksteady Boxing program to look for a program in their area. Obviously, if they're here in Central Florida where we are, they can attend your program. And if you would let them know the best way to reach out to you or where to show up.
Yeah, you can go to Rocksteady Boxing of Central Florida. We have a Facebook page. We are also on the Rocksteady Boxing website with our own Rocksteady Boxing page. So you could go to rocksteadyboxing.org and type in your zip code. Ours is 32806. You can call me. My number is 917-853-9102. I'll answer the phone and answer all the questions that you could have.
Well, and we'd encourage everyone listening to, again, if they haven't tried the program, to go to the website, to search, put in their zip code and search in their area to try to find a program, to show up and try a class. If they do, feel free to share it with us on any of our social media channels or drop us an email. You can find all that on our pdconnectpodcast.com website. And also it's easy enough to find us on Twitter at pdconnect. And on our Facebook page, too. So thanks so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. I think you've offered a lot of fantastic information about this program, and we're excited to talk to you again sometime in the future.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I really enjoyed it. And if one person hears this and it makes a difference for them, then we've accomplished our task.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in for this episode of PD Connect. Please help us connect with the Parkinson's community by spreading the word about this podcast. You can find us online at pdconnect.org and on Facebook at PD Connect Podcast. You can also follow us on Twitter at PD_Connect. Again, that's PD_Connect. Until next time, this is Chad and Tonya signing off.